Hello, welcome to my show, Olio. My name is Susan Rushton, and before I go any further, I need, as always, to explain what Olio means. One definition is that it's short for olla podrida, which is Spanish for rotten bowl or rotten pot, which I just get such a kick out of. It's a Spanish-Portuguese dish with essentially everything in the world in it. Pork in all its iterations, pork, pig's feet, and sausage and bacon, as well as chicken and chickpeas and cabbage and carrots and beans, and of course garlic and onions. As I said, everything except everything in the world in it except grape, knee-high, and bananas. That's one definition. The other definition is that olio is what comes in between acts of a melodrama. So you might have somebody juggling, you might have somebody doing a skit, you might have somebody singing. And none of it has anything to do with anything else, and none of it has anything to do with the melodrama. So in other words, it's apples, oranges, and a monkey wrench. So welcome to my monkey wrench. Today my guest is, and I want you to know that I'm not having him here solely because I have a weekly column in the Auburn Journal. That's never entered my mind. This is Tom Kirk, who is Vice President of Brem Communications and publisher of Gold Country Media, which includes, of course, the Auburn Journal. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Yes, it's great to have you here. And in case we don't get around to it again, I want to indicate that if you want to get hold of Tom, email him, Tom at K at goldcountrymedia.com. Or you could, if you know he's there, you could go down to 1030 High Street, which is the Auburn Journal. So, Tom, who are you? How did you get involved in journalism?
Well, it starts from birth. My dad, who is approaching 80, is still at the same newspaper that he started at when he was 13 years old. Yeah, just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. He started on the press. That was in the old hot type with a lot of lead and many dirty things. And I can remember in the 70s as a kid going down on the weekends and cleaning under the old linotypes. And I'm still alive, so it couldn't have been that filthy. Yeah. But I did every possible job there was to do in the newspaper, from the 1970s cleaning. In the 80s, when it went to offset printing and cold type, I ran the press, I drove the van, I delivered papers, and then I got into the layout and design of the paper. And as I went off to college, I would come back and still do those jobs through the summer, and got into sales. Started writing headlines for some of the journals.
Sales.
It's true, and I came up on the revenue side of the business, as I call it. But as I grew in the business, I started to get more of a managerial role, and again on the revenue side, advertising, and then became a publisher, and that's when. Publisher
where?
I started my first publisher role, and my last name is Kirk. I was publisher of the Enterprise. So it was Captain Kirk takes over the Enterprise.
Yeah, and people automatically call you, automatically call you that.
Easy to remember.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
And that was in central Massachusetts, where I grew up, just outside of Boston.
Yeah.
So that was my first publisher role.
The Enterprise. Cool. Okay. And how did you get out here? Since you are Vice President of Brem Communications, they're based in San Diego.
Correct.
How did you get to San Diego?
I was called, after leaving Massachusetts, we have, I think that just to back up a little bit, who am I? My biggest role in life has been bringing up our 3 daughters. My wife and I met in college of 29 years, and we've got 3 daughters who are just great kids. I've got 3 grandchildren. 2 are in Florida, identical twins, and then one's 18 months older, and she's in Kentucky.
Okay.
So we moved to Florida, and I was a general manager of the Naples Daily News in Naples, Florida, and I took a buyout there. And then after a couple of other stops in Florida, I got a call from a recruiter to at least talk to these folks named Brem out in San Diego, California. And it was the furthest thing that I ever imagined was for me, an Eastern guy, East Coaster, to come to California.
What's the West Coast for?
So long story short is Bill Brem, who was the president of the company at the time, he spoke to me a few times on the phone. I investigated the company a little bit. An amazing family, do a lot for the communities where they own newspapers. They flew my wife and I out, and we absolutely loved Southern California. And the opportunity where they owned newspapers in about 7 states was to become vice president of sales and marketing and travel to the newspapers and work to make them better. And after a few months of considering it, and they hadn't got an offer yet, they finally said, "When are you ready to come to work for us?" And my wife's a school teacher.
You haven't mentioned it.
Yeah, I thought the first time they flew us out there is that, here would become the offer across the table. I had to fly back across the country, not knowing what did I just do. And but it turned out wonderful. Bill Brem Jr. Made me the offer. My wife and I gladly accepted, and it's been great. They are in San Diego, Brem Communications, and how I got up here to Gold Country or Auburn was I had overseen Gold Country Media, Gold Country Printing for 4 years from San Diego. And after some, I missed being a publisher, quite frankly. And when the opportunity came about, I said to Bill Brem, if this would work for you and the Brem family, I'm willing to take my corporate job and base it out of Auburn and become publisher. And sure enough, in December, it all worked out, and it's been wonderful.
Okay, and I'm remembering my time. I worked for the Auburn Journal in the 90s, in the 80s, and left at the end of 91. And before I became a manager, I couldn't figure out what my managers did because I could never find them anywhere. And then I became a manager, and I understood. A manager does everything.
Yeah. It's true.
Everything. And so what was it about managing and publishing that you missed?
The most important thing is the connection to the community. And I would come up here and stop at different places, which now I frequent on a regular basis, such as the Meddlers Group on Tuesday with the Auburn Chamber of Commerce, Rotary meetings and Lions Club meetings. And what I would ask is, what can our newspaper do better? What can the Auburn Journal do better? And it was, I could have stayed for days listening to the comments from the crowd.
How, well, you could do this.
Yeah, and I'm not afraid to take the bullets, and boy, did I take them.
Oh, wow.
And it's, but it's common sense, it's connecting to the community, it's putting the correct content in the paper. And that's one of the things that I've said many times to editors, to managers, is content is king. And again, you mentioned that you have a column in the Auburn Journal.
Yes.
We've got several, John Downs, who I see, and Robin Enos. We've got several great columnists that make the paper what it is.
Good.
And one of the things that I did in December, which was not so popular at the time, when I first came up here, we took the Auburn Journal from 5 days down to 2 days. But what we promised was a bigger, better, bolder Auburn Journal. And we eliminated Associated Press, the national stories about Trump and Clinton and all the national things that really, they may be important to a few people here, and I get that, but the key things in Auburn, in Colfax, and the communities that we cover are local news, local politics, local sports,
local people.
Local people.
Yeah.
And we've tried to do that. We've added more photos, we've added more, just every page, cover to cover, is local news.
Okay, so that's correct content. I wrote down something that you had said. What do you mean by correct content?
What's relevant to the community?
Okay.
Usually when I'm at a meeting, there would be a speaker, and I will try to connect, whether it's the superintendent of schools, the clerk of courts, the county supervisors, the mayor. What is it that our audience, that we can do to put in our papers that will help the community? In some of our papers, and it may have been the case up here because we have had some instability with leadership, to say the least, I wanted to create a stability and a theme for the newspaper. If you need to get a hold of the Auburn Journal, I want it to be the face of the Auburn Journal. And that's what I've tried to do. I get quite a few calls, emails. I give my cell phone out to anybody because it's important that we're accessible and people can come in the front door. We've hosted some events there just to try to break the ice and get people coming back.
Popcorn on
the popcorn on Friday, which we just refurbished that machine. And that came from Mickey at Mickey's Boots, Mickey Bennett, who's a character in town.
Yes, he is.
But there's a lot of stories.
A solemn. Like Mickey Bennett is a solemn character in town.
Quite a singer.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So I'm very conscious that you are walking the walk. You're doing what you say you want to do, because I see you. You aren't the only person from the Auburn Journal at what is that? At the Chamber Forum Tuesdays in the Rose Room, 7 to 8 p.m. a.m. That's why I can't make it.
The Meddlers.
It's called the Meddlers. But you are there, and there's somebody else from the Journal there usually?
Usually it's, well, one of the things that we've done in our industry is to be profitable, that's my primary role as publisher.
Well, of course, yeah. If you're not
I've had to be there.
It doesn't work.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have had in the past a reporter there with me, but it's usually now Gus Thompson is busy doing many things. If you read our paper,
yes, there he is.
Seems to be the Gus Journal. But I've taken over to attend and cover some of the meetings in town, and that's one that I just enjoy tremendously.
For one thing, you get story ideas for one thing. Yeah, that's valuable.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. So, are you a? My assumption is that you may write some of the editorials, and they've been enthusiastic and friendly, and I sense a caring person on the other side. And I value that, and words that are not pretentious, that want to reach people. That's great. I'm grateful. So, aside from focusing on people, can you tell what you think good journalism is?
I think it's reporting the facts and finding the angles within those facts that would be of deeper interest to the audience, and not injecting our own philosophy or our own thoughts unless it's very necessary. There's a lot of things that go on in town, what you would think would be a quiet meeting. The ARD, just one that seems to be very exciting in recent weeks. But there's so many good things that happen in Auburn. Too many things, quite frankly, because it's hard to be everywhere.
Yes.
And I think some of I see it with the service clubs, not so much competing, but that's a good competition. When you have too many cooks, when you have too many people that will assist people to their cars at the fairgrounds, that's what a community is all about. And I can't say enough great things, and that's why it was easy for me to request coming up here, to live here, because it's fun to be part of the community.
That's great. That's great. So how long did you live? You were in San Diego for
about 4 years,
okay.
And 3.5 to 4 years.
And that's a big city, and it must have been a shock to come up here. Yes.
It's very different.
Yes.
But it's more like where my wife and I grew up. My wife was from Western Massachusetts, and I was from just a suburb of Boston, and this is kind of a melding of both. Interestingly enough, we lived in Southwest Florida, in Naples, the home of gated communities and retirees, and that was about 15 years of our life that we lived down there.
So you were the youngsters.
We were the youngsters,
yeah.
And sometimes I still feel that way here
yeah.
when I attend certain meetings. No offense to my Auburn 49er Lions Club, who are just young at heart.
Yeah.
But it's the change has been easy for us.
Good.
Simply because we found a nice place in Lake of the Pines. We're certainly looking to buy and set our roots here for the remaining years of our lives because it's beautiful. You know, it reminds us of, you know, the gated communities of Southwest Florida, yet the mountains of Western Massachusetts, and a lake and a pool and all the things that go with it.
Cool. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
San Diego, which was, everybody says, how can you leave San Diego? I almost was never there. I would fly out on Monday to Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, one of our Brem Communication newspapers, or to Southern California up to Big Bear Lake or Lake Arrowhead or Utah. And we did, you know, a few things on the weekends, but we never felt like we were home. We really feel like we're home now.
Good. Good. So, we are told over and over that the media lies to us, that it's a bunch of that the media is full of liars and bad people, and that plus the internet being a source of information. Where is journalism going?
I think there's two levels. I think the fake news that you hear quite a bit and made popular by our president he's accurate. There is a lot of things that are said and done that are baseless, but we're at a much different level. I think local community journalism, we are held to a standard that is refreshing. I will get on a regular basis, if we didn't put in the who, what, where, why, and when of journalism, I will get a call from somebody or an email saying, Tom, can you look at page 7 of the paper from 2 weeks ago, and can you tell me where this event was? And it's helpful, and I welcome that information. I've got, you know, a handful of people now who will mark up the paper and just mail it to me or drop it off, just for something. But that's a teachable moment for our content staff. Where it's going is we've just got to continue to build our number of pages in the paper so we can present more of that local news, do more photojournalism. You mentioned the internet. In every one of our communities that we cover, whether it's here in Gold Country, in Auburn, or across the country where we have other papers, usually the #1 trafficked website in the local community is our local newspaper. And it's the same case here. auburnjournal.com does very well.
Good.
We get a lot of comments on the stories that we put out. Some, you know, as recent as this morning, I had one of our other writers said, can you look and see some of the comments? If there's something that just isn't right on somebody's not being professional, we can certainly take that down. But we encourage all the comments. And that's where the news just happens. The bad news happens, and I say this to my reporters all the time, but we need to hunt for the good news. And you mentioned the hour views and the editorials. In 2017, one of the concerns I had is our staff was not actively putting in a local hour view, meaning stories that are happening in the community. We've got an election coming up, and there was one in Sunday's paper that talked about, you know, we applaud our current elected officials, and we encourage those who are thinking about making a run to get involved. It's not that difficult. I think the world of every elected official that we have right now, whether it's the Placer County supervisors or, you know, Auburn City Council and mayor, they all do an amazing job, and that's the part that's
and it's sometimes thankless.
It is.
Because people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it parallels my role because many times I only hear the bad news, but in recent months I've started to hear I love the Auburn Journal, and we are just starting. We want it to be. I would love to go.
Say that again. You're starting to hear.
That we love the Auburn Journal,
Good.
The new Auburn Journal.
Good.
And I just ask people to take a look. We've through attrition, we've asked our staff to do quite a bit more, and they have stepped up to the challenge. And
clearly,
we've probably, without any major aggressive layoff, we've reduced our staff by about 25%. And who we have left are the people that understand that we want to win, and that's encouraging.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. Do you? People come to me and say, what's happening? What about the Auburn? The Auburn Journal is not going away, is it? And I've always felt that there may be that the big papers might disappear. Although I don't see that happening for the Washington Post or New York Times. But I think that there's always going to be a place for community journalism. And I remember a phone call I received after it started snowing. Had been snowing all day, and the guys had been going out and taking pictures of snowmen, and a woman phoned at 4 saying, would you come take a picture of my children's snowman? Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. You mean my kids have wasted their time making the snowman? Yeah, but we have a lot of people. Yeah.
We get quite a bit, and I encourage it. I just had a gentleman this morning say he thought it was a mountain lion, but it was actually a fox, and asked if that would be interesting. And absolutely,
sure.
We need that type of community involvement where people will send in information. We had a family of bears up in North Auburn in a swimming pool last week. That was quite amazing.
Yeah.
And here I am, many times I'm out walking and whether it's a mountain lion, I always think it's a deer. The biggest scare I've got recently is there's been a skunk on the cart path at Lake of the Pines. And it's like, we can't go past here. But the community, I think they understand that if they send something in to the Auburn Journal that's worthwhile, I always say, please copy me on that.
Okay.
We have a pretty good record in recent months of getting that information in the paper.
Yeah, good. We've talked about the best part of community journalism. Is there a hard part of community journalism?
I think sometimes when, again, this is a community like most small communities where everybody knows everybody. And most people, and again, I'm a newbie up here, and I'm trying to understand historically how the pieces fit and who was what and when. That's why after meetings, Mike Holmes is somebody who will chat with me every once in a while. Or I will go across the street from the Auburn Journal to Depot Bay Coffee to the corner there where they
or
have
Uptown Signs where Jerry.
Exactly. And I think it's the Babblers. And if I have a question, and I do this probably on an every other week basis, I'll go over and just start a quick conversation and learn things.
Yes.
But the bad part, it's when tragedy happens, or when controversy comes up that needs to be covered. We try to do it in the most discreet way. We have, in my oversight of Gold Country Media in the last 4 years, we've had some content producers, let's just use that term, that have a gotcha mentality. And what I mean by that is
content. Well, gotcha. Let's go back to.
Sure.
We'll return to gotcha. But content producers, what do you mean?
Editors, reporters, stringers, columnists. Sometimes they'll want to go down a path of negativity. And, there's an old saying in the newspaper business, very old, that if it bleeds, it reads. Doesn't fly with local community newspapers. That's not who we are. But to the gotcha, we had reporters who would take an angle that was the angle of negativity, and that's not what we want in our paper. And you had mentioned with the Our Views, trying to be positive, trying to find the good side of things, and that is exactly what all of our staff does. However, we do report, the news that needs to be reported.
Yeah. With an even-handedness, I've felt. Yeah, and you could, I suppose, if you were an inexperienced reporter, use lots of adjectives to move in one direction or another, or put one's own take on this.
Yes.
And of course, I'm putting words in your mouth, but we are both journalists, so we can't do that. We can't, if we're writing news, we have to be neutral.
Yes.
This is what this person said, this is what happened, this is what somebody else said.
Yeah, we've got a very strong group of leaders on the editorial team. Julie Miller, who is based in Auburn, she's a content and design manager.
Yes, she's to whom I send my Auburn Journal column. Thank you, Julie.
And in December, right when I came up here, Bill Sullivan, who was, he's done many things, but when I started at Brem Communications, he was a sales rep in our Roseville office. And he moved over to Folsom as general manager. We had a change in structure where our editor position was eliminated, and Bill overtook that, and he took the Folsom Telegraph to be a finalist for California Newspaper Press Association, and that was wonderful.
Yes.
Bill, I named him associate publisher, overseeing content. And we're confident this year, and I am, from what I'm hearing and seeing every issue of every paper, that I think we'll have multiple papers that will be recognized by
Good.
CNPA this year.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. So we have the Journal is a 2-day-a-week paper, and it's very thick with ads both times. And I am a former hippie, and I hate ads. I hate being sold to. At the same time, I recognize that the more ads a publication has, the better off it is, and the healthier it is.
Correct.
And so this means and as a former person who had to deal with submissions, the paper comes to the people in editorial already marked up with ads. So they have only so much space to fill, and lots of that space is filled already. So you may not have room for everything.
It's a weekly, and with the Auburn Journal, it's a twice weekly struggle to balance the page plan, or the dummy as they call it, with I mean, I want as much content as we can put in there.
Sure.
And the key to that is more ads.
Yes.
And more pages. Because we typically try to be about 50% ads to news ratio. And again, we've got an amazing staff from every department.
That's wonderful.
One thing that we haven't talked about, it's somewhat Auburn's, or the Gold Country Media's best secret, is Gold Country Printing. We have our printing press behind there, which over the last several years we've invested in quality. And our commercial print business, beyond the products that we print of our own, that business has grown significantly.
That's wonderful.
Last week we just started printing a local neighbor to our north. The Grass Valley Union is now printed here locally.
That's great. Tom, we have to stop.
Wow.
I knew this would happen.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Tom, Kirk, Captain Kirk, Vice President of Brem Communications and publisher of Gold Country Media, thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching, and I will see you again.